Nicolas Cage outbid Leonardo DiCaprio for a dinosaur skull in 2007. He had two castles, a private island, and a pet octopus that cost $150,000. Then the crash in the housing market hit hard. The IRS put liens on everything he owned within a few months. His net worth went from $150 million to nothing. He took parts in 29 straight-to-video films merely to pay off his debts because he needed the money. But the worst thing he did wasn't buy castles or strange animals. He put his money in the wrong person's hands. He was almost ruined for good by the betrayal. Nicholas Kim Coppola was born on January 7, 1964, in Long Beach, California. His family was full of both bright and dark people. His father, August Floyd Coppola, taught comparative literature. His mother, Joy Vogelsang, was a dancer and choreographer. She was also of German and Polish descent, which made the family tree even more complicated. The family tree on his father's side was all Italian. Carmine Coppola was his grandfather and Italia Panino was his grandmother. That meant that Francis Ford Coppola was his uncle. His aunt was Talia Shire, Roman Coppola, Sofia Coppola, and Jason Schwartzman. Those were only his cousins. It looked like Hollywood royalty from the outside. But inside the house, it was different. His mother had schizophrenia and severe sadness at the same time. That truth held on to his boyhood like a shadow that wouldn't let go. He would subsequently remark that she would go for lengthy periods of time without remembering anything. She started going to an institution when he was only 6 years old. The marriage, music, fell apart by the time she turned 12 because of her condition. She would disappear for years at a time, lost in psychiatric institutes and getting electroshock therapy. He learned how to separate his feelings. He looked at her episodes like they were science. That's how he dealt with it. His dad raised him in Long Beach. Nicholas would subsequently say that the kids of people with schizophrenia often became what he dubbed superfrenetics. They were always on guard, music, high-achieving, and overachieving. He also mentioned that Charlie Chaplin was one of them. At 15, he received his first taste of Hollywood music. A small role in the movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Just one of Brad's friends who didn't have a name and was in a burger joint. They called him Nicholas Coppola, and it didn't work out right away. The crew in the music cast kept making fun of him with lines from Apocalypse Now. He was just a youngster, the only real teen on site, and everyone else was reciting movies his uncle had made. Laws on child labor cut his hours. The jokes hurt more. One day, he couldn't take it anymore. He changed his name to Cage Nicholas. Partly based on Luke Cage, a superhero from comics. Half by John Cage, the modern composer. He wanted to start over. People in the industry saw it as a rebellion. Francis Ford Coppola closed the doors. Casting agents said no to him, but Cage kept trying. He left Beverly Hills High School when he was 17. He was sick of waiting and being in classrooms. He wanted the films about music. And after most of his sequences in Fast Times were removed, he got a job at the Fairfax Cinema for minimum salary. He sold tickets. He sold maize. He stood in the back of the theater between shifts and stared at the screen, wondering how he would travel from here to there. He later stated it was when films became everything. He also brought pizzas. It wasn't pretty, but it was how I stayed alive. The family name didn't save him. It was a tryout. He was invited in to read lines for actors who were trying out for Rumble Fish. His uncle Francis directed the movie, but Cage didn't get anything. He got a little part. He also made Valley Girl at the same time. It came out first and was his big break. It was a small movie that took 22 days to make and cost about $350,000. It made more than $17 million. He played Randy, a punk musician, in a version of Romeo and Juliet. The director told him to shave his chest hair into a V shape. He yelled until his veins broke. He made sure that people would always remember him. The director only got $5,000. Cage built a career. He really got into the role in Rumble Fish. He modified his face, voice, and mannerisms to make the job feel real. It didn't matter whether it was a minor figure. He was making a point. And then the outsiders came. He wanted to play Deli. He isolated himself in a room for 2 weeks and stared at a picture of Charles Bronson, trying to become the character. His uncle turned him down again and gave the job to Matt Dillon. He then offered Cage a smaller role as a consolation. Cage said no. He didn't want any free stuff. Later, he showed up in a background combat scene, music, without being credited, merely to be on set. Years later, when they were casting The Godfather Part 3, Francis passed him over again and handed the part to Andy Garcia. That cut never healed. He worked at the Cotton Club again in 1984, this time with Francis Ford Coppola. There was a lot of mayhem in the movie. The budget grew to $58 million. There were more than 30 revisions of the script, and 5 of them were written in one 48-hour binge. But the true dark part happened off-screen. Roy Ryden, one of the producers, was killed. A hitman shot him in the head and then blew him up with explosives. Karen Greenberger, a drug dealer, told them to do it. She was worried about losing her $50,000 dowled or cut. The trial was called the Cotton Club Murder Trial. Cage, who was only 20, was plunged into the dark side of Hollywood. That same year, he made Birdie. He played a Vietnam veteran who was hurt. He had 2 baby teeth extracted without anesthesia, covered his head in bandages for 5 weeks, and slept in them. His skin was ruined after he pulled them off. The camera observed something real, like acne and ingrown hairs. Birdie didn't generate a lot of money, but it did win the grand jury prize at Cannes. Cage showed that he will do anything for a part. He didn't slow down in Racing with the Moon. He also performed with Sean Penn in the World War II movie set, Music. Cage played a crazy jock named Nicky when he was a teenager. In one scenario, Penn's character assaulted an affluent child because he almost hit them with a bowling ball. Cage washed the blood off the girlfriend of the guy. Cage hurt himself with a knife in another scene to get into the mood. It was risky, music, but directors began to recognize what he could do. He changed again in 1986 for The Boy in Blue, a Canadian biopic about Ned Honland, a rowing champion from the 1800s. Cage acquired as much as 30 pounds of muscle, learned how to row, and trained like a true athlete. The movie did poorly at the box office, but he was nominated for a Genie Award, which is like the Oscars in Canada. He stood out even when he failed. Then there was Peggy Sue Got Married, another movie by Coppola. Another problem. Cage played Charlie, the romantic lead, and made the bizarre choice to give his character a nasal voice based on a clay horse named Pokey from The Gumby Show. Kathleen, music, Turner, his co-star, was quite angry. She begged Francis to stop him. Cage also had false teeth. Turner was quite unhappy. Francis couldn't miss the deadline, so the group worked 20 hours a day, 6 days a week. Francis even admitted afterward that he wished he hadn't approved the performance because it was so odd. That was the last time they worked together. Nicolas Cage gave one of the weirdest performances ever caught on film in 1988. In Vampire's Kiss, he played Peter Lowe, a literary agent who was losing his mind and had a lot of crazy ideas. He thought he was becoming a vampire. To make the craziness real, Cage didn't simply act odd. He also ate live cockroaches. 3, not 1, not 2. The director told him to do it again simply to toy with him. The original script didn't even have bugs in it. It was meant to be eggs that were still in their shells. But Cage wanted something more horrifying, like when Ozzy Osbourne bit the head off a bat in 1982. Cage said years later, in 2023, that he greatly regretted it and would never do it again. But that moment, as scary as it was the start of what Cage subsequently dubbed his nouveau shamanic acting method. A kind of music that includes wild eyes, loud outbursts, and physical extremes. Cage had previously showed a totally different side in Moonrock just a year before the cockroach hysteria. The movie came out in December 1987 and starred him and Cher in a funny and sad love story set in Brooklyn. He played a hot-headed one-handed baker who steals his brother's fiancée's heart with raw passion and the unforgettable line, "Snap out of it." The movie won 3 Oscars, including Best Actress for Cher, Best Supporting Actress for Olympia Dukakis, and Best Original Screenplay for John Patrick Shanley. The movie was a box office hit, and Cage was nominated as well. This showed that he wasn't simply strange, he could also move people. Then came 1990, which brought 2 additional roles that were very distinct from each other. First, there was Firebirds, a military action movie in which Cage played Jake Preston, a top U.S. Army helicopter pilot. It was his first real action movie, which came out on May 25, 1990. It was made using actual Apache helicopters with the support of more than 100 military men. Even though it was realistic, the movie made just over $6 million its first weekend. Critics called it a Top Gun copy with helicopters. Cage kept going, though, proving that he was just as willing to dive into explosions and cockpit turmoil as he was to eat roaches. In the same year, Cage did something very different with music in David Lynch's Wild at Heart. He played Sailor Ripley, a lover on the run with Laura Dern who wore a snakeskin jacket and was enamored with Elvis. That jacket was more than simply a costume. It belonged to Cage. He bought it at a second-hand store on Melrose and stored it in his wardrobe for a year until he discovered the right function for it. The jacket and Sailor's line about how it represented his uniqueness and confidence in personal independence made it into the screenplay. The movie first showed at Cannes in 1990, where it received the Palme d'Or. However, it still made 300 people leave early test screenings because of its brutal violence and sex. It barely produced $14 million on a $10 million budget, but it made a big impression and allowed Cage a chance to be Elvis without feeling bad about it. But before all that, Cage took a big risk in 1989 with Time to Kill, an Italian-French war drama set during Italy's invasion of Ethiopia in 1936. The movie was shot in Zimbabwe and starred Cage as a soldier fighting agony and guilt in a new land. It also had a European cast with music by Ennio Morricone. It was different from his big American hits in that it was experimental and quiet. The movie didn't make much of an impression, it only got a 5.0 rating on IMDb from about 1,099 votes. But it showed that Cage wasn't hesitant to take chances, even if it meant leaving the country, music, and going to places that weren't well known. Cage was back in the news in 1992 with Honeymoon in Vegas. This time he portrayed a man who lost $65,000 in a rigged poker game and agreed to let the winner spend the weekend with his girlfriend to pay off the debt. Cage jumped out of a plane and landed on the Las Vegas Strip dressed as Elvis at the end of the movie. But the part that was genuinely odd wasn't in the script. Cage was gambling a lot behind the scenes, and his actual addiction came through in the role. Andrew Bergman, the director, felt the humor was just a story, but Cage's behavior off camera made it darker. Those binges were a sign of the huge debts he would have in the 2000s, which showed that his deep dives into characters sometimes had lasting effects. Then he got the part that won him an Oscar. In 1995, Cage played Ben Sanderson in Leaving Las Vegas. Ben is a man who drinks himself to death after losing everything. He didn't just pretend to be intoxicated, he really was. Cage went to 12-step groups, reviewed medical papers, and drank real alcohol during scenes. Mike Figgis, the director, said that Cage was so drunk in one scene that he could barely stand. He got the Best Actor award for his realistic performance, but it ruined his personal life. He married Patricia Arquette in April 1995, but they broke up only 9 months later. They were officially married until 2001, but the movie terminated their relationship. He paid more for that role, which was so raw and powerful, than he ever did for a paycheck. In The Rock, Cage went from anguish to pure adrenaline in just 1 year. Released in 1996, it made $335 million worldwide on a $75 million budget, making it the 4th highest grossing movie of the year. He played Dr. Stanley Goodspeed, an FBI chemist, next to Sean Connery. The stunts, not the acting, made the role so hard. Cage ran across a set that was loaded with fake VX gas, a nerve agent so lethal that even the fake one made him lose his vision for a short time. In the movie, he had real breathing problems and convulsions. The film's specialist music experts had matched every symptom to CDC records, and Cage's body was pushed to its limits by the realism. Then, in 1997, Con Air came out. Cage changed into Cameron Poe, a long-haired Army Ranger who was stuck aboard a hijacked prison plane. It came out on June 6 on 2,824 screens and generated $24.1 million in its first weekend. In the end, it made $224 million around the world. It made $149 million in profit on a budget of $75 million. It was noisy, violent, and full of unforgettable moments, but none were more famous than Cage's statement, "Put the bunny back in the box." It wasn't even in the screenplay. He made it up on the moment, and it became a huge hit in pop culture. But there was a tragedy during the shoot. On August 29, 1996, filming the Las Vegas crash landing scene, a static model of the plane collapsed on music, stuntman Philip Schwartz and killed him. Someone died behind the explosions. Cage played both the bad guy and the good guy in Face Off later that year. He and John Travolta switched roles. The operation scene needed advanced 3D face scans and robotic copies that looked almost real. Cage was so upset by seeing his own fake duplicate that the set had to be emptied so he could write music himself. The false Cage had breathing bladders, moving eyes, and hair that was so real it was like staring in a mirror after death. The prosthetics hurt his skin, and the music process took a toll on his body. But the movie was a huge success, making $245 million around the world, with $112.2 million coming from the US alone. It became Cage's third favorite 90s action movie, along with The Rock and Con Air. Nicolas Cage made almost $20 million for National Treasure, which made $347.5 million around the world. But the story didn't end with the box office results. That accomplishment, music, made him feel uncomfortable. He grew preoccupied with treasure in the real world. He outbid Leonardo DiCaprio for a dinosaur skull that was 67 million years old and cost $276,000 in 2007. He didn't realize it had been taken from Mongolia. When the police came for the music, he gave it back. No apologies, no reimbursement, just gone. In the same year, he spent $345 million on the Laurie home in New Orleans. People used to say that house was full with ghosts, torture, and blood. Deline Laurie, a well-known serial killer, used to possess it. In November 2009, 2 years later, the property was sold at auction for $5.5 million since he was going through a financial crisis. He had followed the riddle too hard, and now it was coming back to haunt him. Cage started his own production firm, Saturn Films, in 1995. He wanted to tell stories that were important to him. That dream turned into a nightmare when he directed his first and only movie, Music, Sonny. The movie came out in 2002 and cost $4 million to make. It only made 179 and only ran in 6 theaters for a week. That cost them 99.6% of their money. The critics ripped it up. They told him he didn't get the story he was giving. If you add in the cost of promotion, he lost around $5 million. After then, Saturn Films were less about seeing things and more about staying alive. He utilized it to get any job that paid the bills. Then, in 2007, Ghost Rider came out. It made $228.7 million over the world, but the expense behind the scenes was very high. To make the blazing, music, skull, Cage had to go through a very rigorous 3D X-ray scanning process. While sensors mapped his head, he had to stay totally still for hours. The team used Maya and Houdini to create the fire effects, changing them from frame to frame. Cage rode 2 bikes while filming, a Buell and a custom chopper named Grace. The days of filming were 12 hours long and they were often sweating under their heavy motorbike gear. He was already really tired. That shoot made him think twice about taking action parts. The budget was $110 million, which was a lot of money at the time. But Cage, music, left everything on the set. He dealt with a different kind of suffering in 2006. He played real-life cop John McLachlan in World Trade Center. McLachlan was one of the officers trapped under the wreckage on 911. Cage confined himself in a sensory deprivation tank for hours to get into the headspace. He went to ground zero. He spoke with people who had survived. He began to have panic episodes. He had to stop shooting over and over again because his mental health was getting worse. The movie, which cost $65 million to make, came out late and made $163.2 million. But Cage left feeling shaken and emotionally drained. He wouldn't see a movie like that again for years. He had always liked Superman. He bought Action Comics #1, the comic from 1938 that originally showed Superman, for about $110,000 in 1997. Then, in 2000, it was stolen from his house. He got the money from the insurance, but he never forgot it. It was found in a storage room in the San Fernando Valley in 2011. In November of that year, Cage sold it at auction for $261,000. He had no choice. He was in a bad place because the IRS demanded $6.2 million from him. In the end, it made 1,264% over 14 years. But the money didn't make them happy. It was a lifeline. He named his son Kal, which is the Kryptonian name for Superman, at the same time. He had once been thought of for a role in a Superman movie. That dream, like many others, faded away between 2008 and 2009. Everything fell apart. Cage owned 15 properties that were valued more than $33 million. He had castles. Schloenstein in Germany and Mitford Castle in England for $6.3 million. He owned a $150,000 dinosaur skull, many Lamborghinis, a private island, and the haunted Lorry Mansion. After that, the housing market crashed. His kingdom fell apart. The IRS put $13 million in liens on his properties. He had to pay $14 million in back taxes. He sold his comic book collection for $8 million to stay alive. People said that his business manager, Samuel Levin, was to blame for his financial bankruptcy. Cage sued him for $20 million in October 2009, but the harm was already done. Cage didn't go bankrupt, instead, he became a one-man movie factory. He was in 29 direct-to-video films from 2010 to 2015. People said bad things about him, yet he kept going. He needed money right away. He told GQ, "I've got all these creditors and the IRS. And I'm spending $20,000 a month trying to keep my mother out of a mental institution." He took roles in Season of the Witch, Stolen, Rage, and more. Each one paid between $1 to $3 million over time. He made over $100 million from these lower-tier films. He insisted he never faked a performance. Every scene was real effort. By February 2012, it worked. He paid $6.2 million to the IRS and cleared the 2007 debt. Some of those films nearly killed him. In Drive Angry, Cage did most of the stunts himself. One shootout scene had him driving at nearly 100 mph beach, while actresses clung to the car hood. A real car explosion singed his eyebrows and left him temporarily deaf. He insisted on using real Hellfire missile props. One blew up and sent a crew member to the hospital. He called it Zen mode. He studied dark sutra positions for his role and once rode his motorcycle at 100 VB Muinmari Tour on the 405 freeway at 3 a.m. just to get into character. He later admitted it was really, really crazy. It didn't stop. In 2013, he took on The Frozen Ground, a gritty film about a serial killer in Alaska. Cage shot scenes in actual 20 Pratt temperatures. Vanessa Hudgens remembered not being able to feel her toes. Cage collapsed, during one night shoot from hypothermia and had to be treated before he could finish. He studied real police footage. He trained with Alaska troopers. It was grueling, but the performance got praise. Nicolas Cage met Christina Fulton in 1988. Their relationship lasted 3 chaotic years and brought Cage his first son, Weston Kapala Cage, born in 1990. From the start, it was rocky. Fulton later said Cage tried to control where she went, who she talked to, and how she lived. It ended in 1991, but they stayed tied together through Weston, and things only got messier. In court, Fulton described Cage as jealous and possessive. Years later, in 2025, she filed a lawsuit against both Cage and Weston, who by then was 34. She said Cage, never stepped in when Weston became violent, even though he knew about his long struggle with mental illness and assault charges. Cage's next major relationship felt like a fairy tale, at least at first. He met Patricia Arquette in 1987 at Kainer's Deli in LA. She was just 18. Years later, she returned into his life with drama straight out of a movie. Dressed head to toe in black vinyl and carrying a giant purple wedding cake, she proposed. They got married in April 1995 on a cliff in Carmel. She wore a leopard print jacket. The ceremony lasted 10 minutes. The marriage lasted, 6 years, but after only 9 months, they separated. They tried to fix, things, but the damage was done. Cage missed important family events for reshoots. While he filmed Con Air, she was left alone. Her mother was dying from cancer and they weren't even living together. Arquette said the fighting never stopped. In 2001, it was officially over. Then came Alice Kim. Cage was 40. She was 19, a Korean-American waitress in Los Angeles. They met in 2004, married the same year in Las Vegas. Their age gap was 21 years. People talked. In 2005, they had a son and named him Cal, Superman's birth name. Cage had always loved comic books. This marriage would become his longest lasting 12 years, but it wasn't peaceful. In 2011, Cage was arrested in New Orleans after grabbing Alice's arm and hitting parked cars. He was drunk. There were whispers of cheating while he was off filming. By January 2016, they had separated. By June, it was public. Cage's next marriage didn't even last a week. He married Erica Quake in Vegas on March 23, 2019. 4 days later, on March 27, he filed for annulment. They had been dating since 2018, but stayed under the radar. Surveillance footage showed them fighting at the courthouse. Cage slurred, "I'm not doing it." Coke replied, "I never asked you to." He said, he was too drunk to know what he was doing. He also claimed she had a criminal past and another relationship. She demanded a payout, saying the press ruined her name. The divorce was finalized on May 31. In 2011, his custody battle over Weston Music dragged even stranger parts of Cage's life into public view. He had bought a pet octopus for $150,000 and claimed, it helped him act. He spent $276,000 on 2 albino king cobras, Moby and Sheba. They were so deadly he carried antivenom just in case. He used to drink wine while staring at them and said it felt like they were planning to kill him. Eventually, neighbors threatened to sue and he gave them away in 2008. He also owned a saltwater shark and a crocodile. Patricia Arquette brought this all up in court, warning that Weston wasn't safe around Cage's exotic lifestyle. His biggest financial mistake came in 2007. He bought a 32-inch Tyrannosaurus bataar skull for $276,000 at an auction, beating out Leonardo DiCaprio. It had serrated teeth and a certificate of authenticity. But in 2014, Homeland Security told him the fossil had been stolen from Mongolia's Gobi Desert. The man who sold it had smuggled fossils for years. Cage gave it back in 2015 and wasn't charged, but he lost all the money. While filming Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans in 2009, director Vera Herzog worried about Cage's performance. He thought Cage had actually used cocaine. Cage hadn't. He used saccharin to mimic the look. But strangely enough, an Australian doctor had treated his sinus infection using real cocaine, which helped him study how it affected movement. Cage used this to craft small details like swallowing and lip smacking. His tax problems nearly destroyed him. In 2012, he paid $657.05 to settle a 2007 tax lien. But that was just part of it. He admitted owing the IRS around $14 million in total. He blamed his business manager and said he had warned him since 2005. To keep up, Cage accepted more film roles than ever. Between 2008 and 2011, he appeared in or produced 11 movies. He never filed for bankruptcy, but he had to sell 15 properties, including castles and a private island. He also sold his comic book collection and rare items like a two-headed snake. His comeback began in 2021 with Pig. It was a small indie film with a $3 million budget, but it changed everything. Cage played a quiet truffle hunter looking for his stolen pig. The movie earned 97% on Music, Rotten Tomatoes. It only made $4.5 million in theaters, but exploded on streaming. By October 2025, it became the 8th most watched film on Prime Video. It got him his first Critics' Choice nomination since leaving Las Vegas and won him an Independent Spirit Award. Even Quentin Tarantino praised him. By 2025, Cage had climbed out of the hole. His net worth hit $40 million. At his peak, Music, he had been worth $150 million, making $20 million per film. Now debt-free since 2023, Music, he lives in Las Vegas and owns a $10.5 million home in Malibu. He no longer buys islands or octopuses. In Prisoners of the Ghostland, also in 2021, Music, he played a criminal in a surreal samurai dystopian world. It was directed by Sion Sono and premiered at Sundance. It ran for 103 minutes and blended westerns with Japanese aesthetics. Reviews were mixed, but praised the visuals and Cage's wild performance. Around this time, Cage had been collecting Japanese art and manga. Back in 2000, Music, his copy of Action Comics #1 was stolen. It was worth millions. Over a decade later, it was found in an abandoned locker. That comic book, just like his career, had been lost but not forgotten.